35-minute ride. It's 10 minutes at 130, and then a couple 165-watt intervals at 30 seconds, and then 2 6-minute intervals at 165 watts. I'm trying to do it mostly in the arrow position, do most of my time, because even on these 35-minute short rides, it's really important to do this, be in the arrow. And also when you're riding at a higher power, you want to get used to riding in the arrow with that higher power. It's very important, so you know what that feels like. Your positioning won't change if you, in a race or an outdoor ride, have to push power in that arrow position. You want that to be a very comfortable thing, and you don't want to burn out your arrow position. You want to be able to hold it. If you're doing an Ironman, you might have to hold it for like 6 hours. And yeah, you'll get some breaks here and there, but you want to be able to hold it for a long time, be very, very comfortable. So even on these short rides, doing it a lot and conditioning yourself, building it up over time is very important. So coming up, I'll show these back to back and throw up little captions of what they are and whatever. But I wanted to preface this section by talking about what my testing was for this week, and basically the two different types of tests and kind of what they mean. So the test for the bike is to test your FTP, which is functional threshold power, and it's based on your power if you have a power meter. You can somewhat do it with heart rate, but it's a lot harder because heart rate can be delayed with the intensity. So if you run really intense, your heart rate will lag behind before it ramps up. But it's a lot easier with power if you have like this, I can show it a little better, a Wahoo Kicker or a smart trainer that shows your power on like Zwift or any other thing. Or like I have these right here, they're Power Tap P1 power meter pedals. I don't use those for indoor biking, but for outdoor biking, that's how you kind of reference it. And if you're going to get into that and use the power indoors, I would recommend you get pedals, because if you're going to use it indoors and then you get to your race and you're pacing yourself, there's no really any point in training with power and then not racing with power. The whole point is to know your ranges and your easy, your threshold, your whatever. But train with power, there's two types of tests that you can do. One is called a ramp test. I can throw, for each of these, I'll just throw an example workout of it. But there's a ramp test where you do a small warm up and then gradually do 20-watt increments of like steps from about 100 watts. And whatever step you successfully complete, that you take about 75% of it, I believe, is like the general consensus. And that is your FTP, or functional threshold power. So that's the ramp test. Or you can do a sustained effort. Now, a lot of these, sometimes it's distance, sometimes it's time. I've done ones where it's like 30 minutes and you just try to hold the highest power you can, or highest consistent power for that half hour. With running, you could do a distance. So running, you can do the same thing to figure out your threshold pace, which I'll explain what both of those are in a minute. But you can do a ramp test where you just set a pace. Say you started 11 minutes per mile, and you knock it down 30 seconds, and you keep doing that until you get to for a minute. So you do 11 minutes per mile for 1 minute, and then you do 10:30 per mile for a minute. You keep knocking down until you can't complete the minute. Same with the bike test. You hold it at a certain power until you can't complete that full minute. and these are consecutive. There's no break. That's why if you see anyone do a ramp test, it's very intense. Mine, I think, was about 15 minutes, or yeah, it was about 15 minutes. Same with my run test. It was about 25, 30 minutes. And it's very intense, very hard work, and it ramps up very fast. But so did those 2 tests. I'll talk about my results in a minute, but what those tests determine is, for the bike, your threshold power, and for the run, your threshold pace. Now, threshold is generally understood to be the amount of power or the pace you can maintain for 1 hour under race conditions. So what that means is you're fully rested, fully recovered, and you're not like in the middle of a peak week. During your training, you're probably going to be able to hold around 15 to like 30 minutes of that threshold pace or power. It's going to be a lot harder, but once you get into like a racing scenario. Another way to determine it without doing one of these tests would be if you have done a bike ride and your heart rate is generally in that like 160 to 170 range, or like if you run a 10K, your 10K PR is probably generally in that range if it's about an hour, and most of the time you'd run that as hard as you can. But yeah, so I'll show the bike one. The bike one didn't record, or no, the run one didn't record very well, so I'll show my warm-up and that stuff and whatever, and just throw up some captions you can watch while I do the steps, and then I'll show a quick like time lapse or super cut of my bike power or my FTP test and the results of that. So after seeing those, you can see the bike one. If you couldn't tell, I was exhausted, and it was, like I said, I think warm up and all the steps were 15 minutes, and then including the cool down, I think I did 45 minutes total. It was a lot. I ended up lifting after my bike because I was planning on doing my long bike today, but I really wanted to do the test just to kind of get that baseline going into the new year. And so I did a leg workout just to kind of work my legs and, get back to that. And then I guess the results, I think I ended around a 211. I just did Zwift's ramp test, And yeah, I got about a 211 watts. And then for the run, I think it was around a 459 per kilometer. I can throw up what that is per mile. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. I think it's, yeah, it should be around like 8 minutes-ish, 8 or 9 minutes probably. But basically, I did, like I said, the ramp test, and I should have shown those. But the better version of those is the just sustained effort tests. So if you can do a test where, say for running, you do a 5K or a 5 mile, like as all out run, or you do a bike and you do 30, 45 minutes of an all out effort, and you take that power, that will, over time, that is a lot more accurate and a lot better to determine your results, because you can run a 5K and then under similar conditions in 2 months, you can run a 5K on the treadmill, or you can bike for 30 minutes indoors or on the same route outside under similar conditions. And you can see that improvement. And a lot of times what it's going to be is your pace or your power for like the bike or pace for the run will not change, but you'll see your heart rate be like 5 beats lower or 10 beats lower, which is what we want. We want our hearts to be more efficient, and having that same pace with a lower heart rate means we're getting more efficient. And that's exactly what we want. And that's what these tests are for, is to determine either A, we're getting more powerful with the same heart rate, or we're doing the same power with a lesser degree of effort from our heart. Finish a 1 mile tempo. So I gotta pause the show. How do I show this? Right there, did that's six kilometers, so a little over 3 miles. And in there's two 1 mile intervals at threshold pace, which I can throw that up on the screen and show you. I'm a little sweaty and it's hot in here. But yeah, we did that. I can show the threshold pace, the two workouts. Had to cut it a little short because we got busy, but luckily I got all the thresholds and rests done. I just had to skip the cool down, which I already did like 3 minutes of it, and it was 10 minutes, so not a huge deal.